In this slideshow, I'm going to be going over what differentiated instruction is and some examples for teachers in PE teaching settings. First, I will go over some factors that contribute to differentiated instruction. So first is changing up the content. So students learn in many different ways and can display their learning in many different ways. So adapting how the content is demonstrated is a good way to implement DI. And content shouldn't be changed, but there should be different ways of displaying learning. Something else that contributes to DI is the process. So this could be flexible groupings. So that's what kind of groups students are put in. So switching up the groups and making them very different from each other could increase learning and relatedness. So splitting them up by ability or their learning profile, their interests, so they get to know each other, but not their gender or in athletes versus non-athlete groups. Another factor is the product, so it should be adapted based on how the student performs and what they know, their learning profile. So they should be setting goals to motivate them and encourage persistence. And as well, these skills should be authentically assessed. So applying them in situations like games makes it more of a real-world setting where they can display their skills, their behaviors, their strategies, and their overall thinking. Lastly, the learning environment can also be a factor. So promoting self-determination is very important because you want it to be very individualized. So depending on how the student learns best, how they show their learning best, should be taken into consideration as well when they are learning their skills and in class. Next, I will go over some examples of implementing differentiated instruction. The first example is getting to know your students. So this should be done at the beginning of the year or even before that when you know who your students are, sending out a survey or questionnaire about what kind of activities they enjoy outside of school or in school, and sports they like, and listing them or checking boxes off how skilled they are in different sports and activities could be a great way to get to know them and make more of an individualized approach to the class instead of the regular curriculum. The second example is a lesson plan example. So for this, it would be volleyball stations. So focused on more of a forearm pass, which maybe was learned the class before or earlier in the class. So the students in this case should be grouped by ability or readiness because a forearm pass could be quite a complex skill depending on what age group. So putting students who know how to do it together and who need more work on it together could clash a little bit. So about the same ability in each group, 3 to 4 students. And in this case, at each station, providing a single task and different tasks at each station depending on different skill levels could be a good way to go about it so that students can decide at which skill level they think would challenge them yet is fun. So once they have decided to do that task and they've performed it for a while, they can move on at their own pace when they feel that they have performed it well enough or have decided to go to another task. Also, at each station, instructions should be provided, so whether that's visual or demonstration or written down, just so all students understand the task they should be performing. And here are a couple examples of some tasks that can be done. So the first task is more of a beginner task, so keeping the ball off the ground for as long as possible with your group or teammates. So this can be made easier or harder by some adaptations to what body part you're using to keep it up, if it's one hand or both hands or all limbs, or using a different kind of ball. So a beach ball would make it easier because the ball floats a little more. And then the goal of this station can be adapted for each group or each student. So depending on how many times they want to hit the ball or how long they want to keep the ball off the ground. The second task is for more experienced players, so involving a net. One tosser on one side tosses to a student who's trying to forearm pass the ball back to a player on the other side, and they can move around on the court, making it easier or harder for them, making the target or a student bigger, smaller, just to expand what they can do when performing this task.